In the previous class, we discussed about root word, primary suffix, secondary suffix and prefixes and their use in the naming of an organic compound. The examples which we have studied earlier classes are very simple examples, but all organic compounds will not have a same simple structures. The structure of organic compounds may be complicated. In such cases, the selection of a main chain is more important, and also the numbering of carbons in that main chain also we have to follow certain rules. Let us see these rules one by one. Now, how to select a main chain? Because to name an organic compound, the most important task is the selection of the main chain, and if any functional group is there, the position of that functional group. If any substituents are there, the position of those substituents. They should not lead for any ambiguity. For that, we should follow some rules. According to the first most important rule is, while selecting a main chain, the main chain should consist of maximum number of carbon atoms linked directly with one another. While selecting the main chain, these carbon atoms may not be present in a straight line. They may be in a zigzag way, but the only condition is there should be a direct bond between one carbon to other carbon in the total chain. That is the first point that we have to remember. Next, if any functional group is there, that functional group must be present in the main chain. Now, let us verify some examples. So, this is one organic compound. Now, if you observe this organic compound, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon atoms in a straight chain, and 2 carbon atoms are attached here. This is one way. But if I consider this as a chain, see, the condition for selecting a chain means there should be a direct bond between carbon and carbon. There is a bond between this carbon and this carbon, with this carbon and this carbon, and there is a bond between this carbon, this carbon. So, this can be taken as a long chain. Why I have selected this? Because if you take this as a long chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you are getting 6 carbon atoms. But if you take the straight chain as a main chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only 5 carbon atoms are there. So, the first rule to selecting a main chain is the main chain should contain maximum number of carbon atoms, and it need not be a straight chain. It may be a zigzag one. So, this selection of this as a main chain is correct. Now, the thing is numbering the carbon atoms. Here we have one group which was attached to this carbon. This group is attached to this carbon. This group is methyl group. Now, we have to mention the position of the methyl group. So, to mention the position of that methyl group, you have to give numbers to the carbon atoms in this main chain. Numbering may be done from any side, But here also some rules are there. That is, the substituents are present, they should be the least carbon. If any functional group is there, we have to give preference for that functional group. Or a double bond or triple bond are there, first we have to give preference for those functional groups. If no functional group is there, we have to give preference for the substituents. Suppose if I give numbers from this side, this carbon will become first carbon, and this carbon will become second carbon, and this carbon will be the third carbon, and this carbon will be the fourth carbon, and this carbon will be the fifth carbon, and this carbon will be the sixth carbon. So if I number like this, this methyl group is present in the third carbon. If I number these carbons from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is no change in the total number. But this here, this substituent is the fourth carbon. According to this numbering, the substituent will be in the fourth carbon. So we have to take this where we have third carbon. So numbering from this side will be the correct procedure. So the name of this compound is 3-methyl 3-methyl hexane. This is 3-methyl hexane. But if there is a double bond in this compound, for example, if double bond is present here, if I give numbers to this like this in the previous case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, double bond will be between 4 and 5. But if I give numbers from this side, 1, 2, 3. So I should give preference for this double bond rather than this numbering. While this numbering, this methyl group will be in the fourth carbon. In such cases, the name of this compound will be considered as 4-methyl hex 2-ene. 4-methyl hex 2-ene. 4-methyl hex 2-ene. So if functional group is not there, we should give preference for the prefixes or substituents. They should be in the least carbon. If any functional group is there, we should give preference for that functional group. So numbering should be in that side only, so that the double bond or triple bond of any other functional group should be in the least carbon. So that is the precaution that you have to take while numbering the compounds after selection of a main chain. And another important rule is, the main chain should contain functional group even though it has less number of carbon atoms. For example, same compound we are going to take. This was the same compound which I have taken previously. Now here the only change I am going to do is, in place of this H2 hydrogen, I am adding OH group. Now here in this compound we have a functional group. So if I number like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I consider this carbon, I am going to get only 5 carbon atoms. But here if I consider this as a main chain, I am going to get 6 carbon atoms. Previously we mentioned that while selecting a main chain, the main chain should contain maximum number of carbon atoms. But if you consider this as a main chain as we done in earlier case, this functional group is not including in the main chain. So here the important rule that you have to remember, while selecting a main chain, if any functional group is there, that functional group must be in the main chain even though it contains less number of carbon atoms. So, here though it contains only 5 carbon atoms, for this compound we will take this as a main chain. And even the numbering also you should be done from this side only. There is no other option. Means in second carbon we have one ethyl group. So, the name of this compound is, root word is pent plus ane. OH group is there. So, ol, that is pentanol. In pentanol, in second carbon you have methyl group. So, 2-ethyl pentanol. That means 2-ethyl pentanol. 2-ethyl pentanol. Because I already told you, if functional group is in the first carbon, you need not mention if it is in the first carbon. Suppose if it is in the some other carbon, you have to mention that name also. Suppose for example this OH group is here, pentane to ol. That means you have to mention the position of that functional group also. By default, if it is in the first carbon, you need not mention it, or if you specifically, if you want to mention it, you can write it as 1-ol. Pentane 1-ol. You may mention like that. Now let us take another example. Here in this compound we have a functional group CHO, that is aldehyde, and it should be in the main chain, and CHO and COOH we can call them as a terminal functional groups. If such functional groups are there, this carbon must be a first carbon. So, the numbering may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 1, 2, 3. These are the possible chains. So, anyway the maximum number is 5. So, we are going to take this as a main chain. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here this methyl group is in second carbon and ethyl group is in third carbon, and this is root word. Since 5 carbons are there, root word is pent. Since all are single bonds, ane, and here aldehyde is there. So, in place of this small e, you have to add Al, that is pentanol. Now, for this pentanol, in second carbon you have methyl group, in third carbon you have ethyl group. So, while mentioning these two prefixes, which prefix has to be mentioned first? For this, in IUPAC system, you should follow alphabetical order. In English alphabets, letter E comes first than letter M. Letter E comes first than letter M. So, you should give preference to ethyl group. So, first you should mention ethyl group, that is, so the name of the compound is 3-ethyl 2-methyl pentanol. This is the name of this compound, 3-ethyl 2-methyl pentanol. 3-ethyl 2-methyl pentanol. So, while selecting the main chains, we have to follow the rules. Rule number 1, the main chain should contain maximum number of carbon atoms. The main chain should contain maximum number of carbon atoms. But if any functional group is present, that functional group must be included in the main chain. The functional group must be included in the main chain, though due to the inclusion, though the chain has less number of carbon atoms than other method. So, at that time when functional group is there, you should give preference for the functional group so that it should include in the main chain and will have maximum number of carbon atoms. Suppose if in alternative way, there may be a chain with maximum number of carbon atoms and that functional group is not going to include in it, that maximum number cannot be considered. Here the main thing that you have to consider is the functional group should include in the main chain, though it contains less number of carbon atoms. So, that is one point. Then after numbering, when you are numbering the compound, you should give numbers so that the carbon attached to the functional group should get least number. Then substituents. When you are mentioning the substituents as a prefixes, they may be in different carbon atoms. So, while arranging them as a prefix, you should follow the alphabetical order and the letter, the starting letter of that prefixes should be alphabetically, should be in that first, in the same order of English alphabets. So, these are the important rules in the selection of the chain. There are so many rules. Let us discuss one by one. Another example. Now, let us observe this compound. Here in this compound, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 carbon atoms are there, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 carbon atoms are there. So, anyhow there are 7 carbon atoms, maximum number. So, you can take any direction, this one as a main chain. Now, if I give numbers from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and from this side if I give numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, there are two methods for numbering, we can give any method. Now, if you observe here, in this side you have substituents in third and fifth carbon, and from that side also you have substituents from third and fifth carbon. That means two groups are present at identical positions, that is 3 and 5. In any direction the numbering is 3 and 5. Now, which method or which numbering system that I have to follow here? So, this, let it be, this one is the first method. In first method, 3-methyl 5-ethyl. If this is the second method, in this second method, 3-ethyl 5-methyl. Now, which method that I have to follow? In such cases where two substituents are at identical positions in the chain and no functional group is there, if functional group is there, we have no other alternative. We will give numbers from that side only, or the side through which the functional group is going to get the least number, we will select that number. But some rare cases, from any side we are going to say get, suppose if in the fourth carbon, if any functional group is there and these two are present here, any side of this is the fourth carbon. So what thing that we have to give, what method that we have to prefer? For that, the name or the prefix which comes first in the alphabetical order will be give preference. That means in ethyl and methyl, letter E comes first in English alphabets than M. So we should give numbers to ethyl in the least carbon. That means this second method is correct while numbering this system. So the name of this compound, here 7 carbon atoms are there, so hept, all are single bonds, ane, so it is heptane. And here third carbon, ethyl group should be in the least carbon. Here if you take first method, the ethyl will be in the fifth carbon. So you should not take this. Now this should be considered, that is 3-ethyl 5-methyl heptane. 3-ethyl 5-methyl heptane. Remember once again, if two different groups are getting identical positions in the main chain, that is both are having same positions from this side numbering or that side numbering, they are getting the same positions. In such cases, you should remember that the prefix or the substituent, first letter which comes first in the alphabetical order must be in the least carbon. From that side only we have to give numbers for such compounds. This is another important rule that you have to remember. Of course, if any functional group is present, you should give preference for that functional group only. Sometimes functional group, even after considering the functional group also, you will get the identical positions. Then only you should follow this rule. But if functional group is there, we have to give first preference for the functional group only. Let us see this example. Here we have one compound, both are same compounds. In this compound, if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in any direction you are going to get same number of carbon atoms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So any direction you can get a main chain. Suppose if I select, in the first case I am going to select this as a main chain, and in the second case I am taking this as a main chain. For this compound, the selection of the main chain we'll have two possibilities are there for having two main chains. Both are having same number of carbon atoms. Here also I have 5 carbons, there also I have 5 carbons. So I can take any one like this. So if I want to name this as a main chain, the name will be different. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is in third carbon 3. In propyl group, that propyl group attached to second carbon. So 2 propyl, 3, 2 propyl pentane. Because this is a pentane, 5 carbon atoms alkane, so it is a pentane. In pentane, in third carbon, I have 2 propyl group. Propyl group, propane means this is propane. So one hydrogen removed, we call it as a propyl. This propyl, if it is here, it is normal propyl, but it is in the second carbon, so that I have to mention that also. So this can be considered as 2 propyl pentane. Suppose if I take this as a main chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here in this carbon, by numbering here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, anything we are getting 3, 4, or from this side I am getting 2, 3. So I should give preference to 2, 3 only rather than 3, 4. So numbering is this side, this is a pentane. So in second carbon there is a methyl group, in third carbon there is ethyl group. So the name is 2-methyl, 3-ethyl. So sorry, first I have to mention ethyl first. So 3-ethyl, 2-methyl pentane. 3-ethyl, 2-methyl pentane. Now out of these two methods, which one is correct one? Because both of them may not be correct. Here another rule that you have to remember is, if you are getting a similar chains like this, we have to take a main chain which will have more number of substituents. That should be taken as a main chain. Out of the two options, which main chain will have more number of substituents or more number of prefixes, that should be considered as a main chain. Here this is the only substituent, only prefix. Here I have two prefixes, one is ethyl and other one is methyl. So the selection, this selection is correct and this selection is wrong. So the name of this compound is 3-ethyl 2-methyl pentane. So remember, while selecting a main chain, if a compound is getting two possible main chains with same number of carbon atoms, out of those two possibilities, the chain with maximum number of side chains should be taken as a main chain. You should count the number of side chains. By what way you are going to get more number of side chains, that chain should be taken as a main chain. So particularly in this case, this should be taken as a main chain, because by this way you are going to get two substituents, whereas by this method you are going to get only one substituent or one side chain. This is another important rule that we have to follow.